I was brought in
Hmm.
last month into SCI as a director of education. And so I am new to this team, but we are relaunching and will be relaunching as a registered nonprofit here in the US. And the structure, one of the reasons why we have this structure within China, some of it has to do with tax reasons when you administer courses within that country and the tax implications for that. We have agreements and all between, and one of the big values that SCI was and will continue to be built on is the idea of transparency. So we will be releasing financial statements. We won't be waiting for, the IRS to catch up with whatever, 990 from 3 years ago that is releasing.
Wow.
So that's something that we are committing to do that will be a part of our regular ongoing accountability and transparency with our industry.
Oh, well done.
Um,
If you're starting or growing your business in these volatile times in coffee and you need a little extra support, our scope of business advisory services may be just what you need. Join one of our hugely successful mastermind groups for support in a group setting, or send us an email to discuss our one-on-one consulting and business advisory services, where we'll work with you one-on-one to solve specific problems in your coffee business. All our services come with a 100% money-back guarantee, so send us an email at support@mapperforward.org and let us know how we can help you today. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is sadly the last episode of what has been an insight into what it's like to have dinner with Tim and I without the hummus and the fattoush and all the delicious dinners that we have. But this is for real, like exactly what it's like to go into one of our conversations. Tim Heinze, the Director of Education at the Sustainable Coffee Institute, is here for the last episode of the series. We're talking about changes to the queue. And in this episode, we're going to talk about what are the options available to the community of queue graders. Now, from what I understand, Tim, you guys have an alternative. I have seen people already renounce their queue and get certified with SCI. Is that correct?
yes. So what uh, we were talking last episode about why somebody, why they have value in having that Q grader certificate, what they're wanting to get from that, many of
Mm.
those different aspects, and that changes and that's different across the industry. What we've introduced at SCI is what we are calling the Coffee Cupper Certificate, which is a certificate that right now what we are offering is for any Q grader who has completed the Q grader course. They can log into SCI's website. They can register an account. They can upload their Q certificate, and they will receive a SCI coffee cupper certificate. And that puts them into the SCI system where over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, we are going to be releasing some professional development videos, some webinars, some other aspects in multiple languages. And it's something that I really get frustrated with for many of the other programs out there. We're really trying to focus on doing things in multiple languages, and there's great technology out there now that we can do that.
Mm-hmm.
But that provides people an opportunity to maintain that professional development certificate, that professional development standing, receiving some professional development, receiving some other investment from SCI into their well-being without having to go and then, if they want to pursue a CVA course or do that, having to pay for that and access. So it's a free sign up, free application, free process. We've had a little over 700 people since we released that that have applied for that and received that. And been a part and joined the SCI community. We are also I'm going to be meeting, actually today's May 7th. I'm meeting tomorrow, May 8th, with a growing number of instructors and educators that are interested to learn more about what programs and what educational courses that SCI has that they can be a part of promoting and instructing within their networks and their communities. So what is being offered to Q graders is the opportunity. And yes, we continue and need to continue building the recognition. I acknowledge that SCI is not as well known as CQI and SCA yet. And part of one of our visions is that we would continue to build a name and recognition as an entity that is providing high quality education that is leading the globe in coffee education across our supply chain. And so that's, ultimately what our vision for SCI is. And those are kind of what we're looking at as options for Q graders at the moment.
Now, people had questions about the history of SCI, where it's based, where is it prevalent, how long has it been operating? Do you want to give us a bit of a background from that perspective?
So a bit of the history. So SCI was registered originally in 2016, based in China. There were several individuals, many of them that are still a part of the organization from a board level and from an advisory level. So Marty Polak, Dr. Manuel Diaz, and there were others that were a part of the initial launch. Now, SCI at that time was registered in China as a for-profit business. There were some courses that were offered, some processing courses, and even now there are some roasting courses and some barista courses that are offered through SCI. With kind of what I've called it a relaunch. Because it's not, I am not one of the founders of. I was brought in last month into SCI as a director of education, and so I am new to this team. But we are relaunching, and we'll be relaunching as a registered nonprofit here in the U.S. And the structure. One of the reasons why we have this structure within China, some of it has to do with tax reasons when you administer courses within that country and the tax implications for that. We have agreements and all between, and one of the big values that SCI was and will continue to be built on is the idea of transparency. So we will be releasing financial statements. We won't be waiting for, the IRS to catch up with whatever, 990 from 3 years ago that is releasing. So that's something that we are committing to do. That will be a part of our regular ongoing accountability and transparency with our industry.
Oh, well done.
I've also taken the role of director of education in a non-paid position. I'll just be very frank. SCI doesn't have money right now. We are very, very thin.
It's a startup
on that at the moment. Correct. And that's why, as a relaunch, it's kind of why the term that I've used, because in very much so, it is in that startup mindset, which is exciting. But I also completely understand that people are asking, well, what am I signing up to? Like, what am I committing to? So we will be, and I would imagine by the time this goes live, even for people who are access it early, we will have very clearly stated our vision, mission, and values on the SCI website under our relaunch. And so we've already finalized that information, just working on getting it all uploaded. Speaking of not being a web designer, that's not my expertise. So people who do have that expertise are being utilized for that. We are also in the process of, because one of the things that I feel very passionate about is I know there are many educators that are wonderful, fantastic educators that are looking for a home, for a community to find that support and encouragement, and to facilitate trainings that they and within areas that they feel they have expertise in. So one of the kind of initial steps that we're looking at, or that we're pursuing and are in the middle of, is allowing and equipping those people to be SCI instructors, specifically looking at what courses they're interested in teaching, and then providing those materials to those individuals to begin teaching and promoting those courses. We do have we are, as a nonprofit, there's no owner, but it's governed by a board of directors. We are in the process of finalizing who those individuals are. We have finalized the framework around what that board will be made up of. So we will have representation from the instructor community, which is something that we have advocated for heavily for years. I have within CQI. That's we have. There are some instructors. In fact, let me clarify. There have been in the past instructors as board members of CQI. So I want to be very clear. There are, and there currently is. But one of the things that we will be doing with SCI is that individual will actually be self-selected by the instructor community. So the group of instructors and educators will actually select somebody to represent the instructor community at a board level. We're also balancing out, we have an education board that is responsible for, and that's on the website now. You can see who all those individuals are that are responsible for contributing to content for the different courses. And I feel like it's a really cool representation of people from many different sides of our industries and many different communities. But we will also have specific board positions that will be held by individuals representing producing countries, individuals representing consuming countries. So we've laid the framework of, for lack of a better term, the profile or the expectations of what different individuals on the board are representing. And we're in the kind of, I'd say, middle stages of selecting those individuals and reaching out to people asking if they'd be interested in serving as board members. So the governance structure is a board of directors that will approve budget, approve strategy, and have review of the financial transparency and that aspect of SCI. And then from a management perspective, I'm the one that's leading from a management oversight level, our educational program. So serving as the director of education. We also have two other individuals, a gentleman named Ben, who's over our IT and has done a ton of work on the website and getting a lot of the materials ready for the website. And then a gal, Grace, she is serving in an admin role, helping with, because every time when people submit, particularly in the course of the last 2 weeks, when people submit curator certificates, there's an approval process just to make sure everything gets loaded correctly. But the last 10 months, there's been a significant amount of work on the website that allows for learners to have a profile that shows what courses they've taken, kind of what progress they've made, allows us to release educational materials, videos, all that kind of stuff. So back in the first episode, when I was talking about when all of this was announced and I reached out to Marty and I was like, I'm doing something, it was really, really amazing timing and wonderful timing, because he had been working kind of on the side with getting SCI kind of in a position to have a relaunch with some of the website, particularly around some of the website back end. So what communities I know, a gentleman named Ibrahim in Saudi has been teaching. He's also a part of our education advisory board. He's been doing a lot of roasting courses there, which I haven't taken personally, but I've heard wonderful feedback from, and I know that there's been he's a fantastic educator there. And I know that there's been a couple barista and quite a few processing courses that have been run mainly in China and I believe a couple areas of Central America. But I'm new to the team, and I'm not new to education, and I'm not new to educational programs, but I'm new to the SCI team. And that's a little bit of the history and background of the entity. And there's some other really important kind of values and distinctives that are and will be at the kind of foundation that drive decisions and the things that we do. And again, all of that is going to be uploaded and released soon. And again, by the time this is viewed, should be live on our website.
Folks, it should come as no surprise to anybody who listens to this podcast that the one thing that I value is integrity. And intrinsically linked to integrity is transparency, right? I have broken bread with this guy, and I know the way that he thinks, and I know that the way, we have talked about these things on and on and on and on before any of this stuff ever happened, right? I trust his intentions behind what he's doing. And
Thank you.
to give you my pleasure. And the complete opposite of that is I want to give you an example of the opposite of that kind of transparency that you may not be aware of. And this is why I'm going to get myself into some trouble here, but good trouble is good trouble. We've all heard of a platform called Coffee Knowledge Hub.
Mm.
Right. Coffee Knowledge Hub, most people would say, if I would ask you, who owns Coffee Knowledge Hub? And you'd say, well, I don't know, Andrew Tolley. Guys, Coffee Knowledge Hub is owned by Simonelli. Victoria Arduino. They're all the same company. In 2024, the SCA board had someone from Coffee Knowledge Hub, someone from Victoria Arduino, and someone from Simonelli. There wasn't open transparency about the fact that Coffee Knowledge Hub is owned by Simonelli. I don't like that. For me, when you're not being transparent, it means you've got something to hide. And I may be seeing that completely wrong, folks. But whenever in an industry like coffee, you're not telling us all of the information so that we can make our own decision, you're calling us stupid, first of all, and insulting our intelligence. And this industry is filled with many, many smart people, but it's also filled with many, many lazy people who will happily just follow. And so when you come up against someone who is saying, listen, let me show you everything. In a year like 2025, when there's all of this political fuckery that's going on, you should value that, in my opinion. I am not someone who's ever going to take a course from the CSI. It's not my part of the industry. I'll also not do the CVA. But we are faced with a moment in the history of our industry where soon enough you're not going to be able to call yourself a Q grader. So these people who like hold that on their email signature and get qualified as like, I'm a Q grader, you're not going to be able to say that anymore. You've got to make a decision about, do you align yourself with this CVA or do you find another place? And I can tell you, like, we took, when Coffee Knowledge Hub approached us, and I really like Andrew Tolley, I really, really like Lauro from Simonelli. He's the person who approached me, got on really well, but it wasn't working for us. I wasn't okay with the fact that there wasn't this transparency out there that Coffee Knowledge Hub was owned by Simonelli. Why are they hiding that? So all I'm saying is I don't get anything out of anybody signing with these guys. I want us to be doing more honest business. I feel like we don't talk about that enough in this industry. We need to be doing more honest business. For an industry that goes on about transparency, we sure fucking don't hold ourselves to a high enough standard of it. And I just think that's important for people to know. Anyway, something else that people want to know, Tim, is how has China reacted to CSI? Because they know that you're in China and there are a lot of people in China that take the qualification.
So Sustainable Coffee Institute, SCI, there's been, how has China reacted? There's been quite a few courses that have been given. So Torch Coffee, which is, there's no, Marty is one of the founders of Torch, one of the, he runs Torch. There's others in that, and I don't have all of the details of that, not because they're hidden, but just because I'm unaware. Several of the SCI courses have been taught through their lab in southern China, in Pu'er, and I believe in a couple other spaces in southern China. And from what I understand, other Torch labs that are across the world also have done some different SCI courses. In terms of the response of people in China, particularly those who are Q graders, who are looking at kind of what they do. There's been a great response of people who have said, we want something that's going to actually be investing in our professional development and providing those opportunities. So, and there are markets around the world that having that certification is a distinction that provides opportunities in the marketplace. And again, I don't want to diminish that. I don't want to overvalue that so it becomes the only guiding force of what SCI does, because it's not. But I don't want to devalue that as something that is important for individuals. And so, I'm not sure exactly if that question is coming from the standpoint of like acceptance of, the new CBA, or if it's coming from the standpoint of China being a market that, there's a lot of education, and there's a growing market for education in that area. There's a growing desire for it. I think it does fill some needs that are there and provides a different option for individuals.
I was quite taken aback by how many people have opinions about what deal has Yanis done to try and get in with the Chinese. A lot of people want me to ask that question. And they're like, I know you can't ask him, but can you ask Yanis if he comes on the podcast? But some questions did come in very specifically. How has China reacted to SCI? Because I think that people think that there's some weirdness going on, because that's where in their opinion, a lot of the money's going to come from moving forward, given that it's such a booming market, right? And there's a culture there for qualifications.
Yeah, I think so. And, that's part of our commitment to financial transparency. And I think, if people have specific questions about, what programs, who's educating, who's taking courses, we're happy to provide and, breakdowns of how many people have attended courses for what countries. I mean, I think I feel like about 5, 7, 8 years ago in our industry, transparency reports became a really kind of big buzzword around the specialty industry. And I feel like I know there's still companies that do them, and I know that it's maybe it's not a buzzword anymore because it's just become normal practice for some entities, but I feel like we've lost a little bit of that. And I've already started kind of envisioning what that would look like, not only from a financial perspective, but even what we're doing. Marty and I and the board have discussed the board that existed then, and as we begin to transition to our relaunch and new board of directors, we've discussed that we want to build the administrative operational side of SCI to be funded 50% by the revenue that it receives, and 50% to be focused on outward project focused work. And if we can't maintain operationally what we do with that 50%, then we're departing from our vision and really what we truly want to be impacting. And so having that kind of from the beginning, and I acknowledge I'm not ignorant to the fact that I'm sure a lot of companies start off down that path and start off with that value, and life happens and they have to pay bills and things occur and they depart from that. But that's something that we want to verbalize outwardly as a commitment, and are inviting the industry to hold us accountable to, which I think is what transparency reports, financial accountability, all of that about is being willing to say, well, hold us accountable to these values, because this is what we're saying that we're going to do and be about. And if you feel like we're not, or you feel like we've departed from that, we're inviting the industry to speak into that.
At the end of the day, nobody's saying we don't want anyone to make money.
For sure.
Like nobody's saying we don't want the SCA to be making money. We don't want the SCI to be making money. We don't want CQI to be making money. In fact, if you're adding value with the product that you're providing and you're solving problems, it goes back to that old adage of like, bitch, take my money. Right? Like don't try and trick me into it.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you've lost my trust, you've lost my trust.
Yeah.
2 more questions. There's a lot more, but we've answered a lot of them through the series. One question that a lot of people had was, what are you guys doing for farmers?
Yeah. So there, so two particular individuals, Dr. Manuel Diaz and Dr. Cecilia. Dr. Manuel is based in Central America. Dr. Cecilia is based in Kenya, and other instructors, particularly a gentleman named Nilton out of Guatemala. There is one of the modules, one of the programs within SCI is focused on farming and processing. Now, that's something that we will continue to be building out. There's been a lot of education around that nursery, how to, how to create a nursery, how to, various aspects of farming. And one of the things that I'm really passionate about is those different disciplines need to grow and evolve and build on their own, meaning that just because the way that we have developed a barista program means that's how we have to develop a farming program is incorrect, because
I
they're
like
very
that.
different.
They're
So,
disconnected.
so a barista and a roasting program falls very well into a level 1, level 2, level 3, right? So you have foundational
Mm-hmm.
theory, you have skills, you have advanced skills. Farming is something that actually might be very different. Maybe it is how to set up a nursery, how to lay out your plantation, how various aspects that involve farming that aren't a level 1, level 2, level 3 progression, but they're more knowledge and skills driven, competency based driven. So the way that we've laid the groundwork for creating those programs is that we're not tied to a structure that just because roasting is makes more sense to develop like this, that means farming has to develop like this as well. Or that means cafe management has to develop like this as well. The idea of Sustainable Coffee Institute looks at sustainability across economic, environmental, and social areas. And so there's this that is at the heart of the educational programs that are created and that are established, is how does this influence and impact that across those different areas and in those different ways for those individuals and those learners taking those courses.
Yeah, awesome. And I guess the one thing that everybody's asking is, how does the price correlate between the qualifications for the SCI and for, let's say, we benchmark it against the Q grading courses?
So I we're going to be releasing more information about pricing structure. The way that we have, in a similar format, we will be charging, like when an instructor gives a course, there is a royalty, a license fee per learner that goes back to SCI for the content creation. And one of the things that's different is we will be providing, and we do provide, actual structured lesson plans, PowerPoints, content, handbooks, all of that for instructors as part of ensuring that the curriculum that's being taught is aligned with the values and is consistent. So that's one thing. And the fee structure of what we're charging is much more aligned with what some people might be familiar with the SCA courses, where it's not the significantly high royalty that some of the CQI and 6-day courses have. So that it's going to vary depending on which level and which type of course it is. We will be sharing that information. Again, that's part of our commitment to financial transparency. But one of the things we will be introducing is the opportunity for instructors to do what we're calling a producer participant grant. So somebody who is taking a course that is a producer, and we had to we structured it like that, not because somebody who is living in a producing country, but actually in the consuming side of the industry, their ability to pay is going to differ some ways. It might not in others, and it might in some. But what the way that we've structured it at this point, and one thing that I am big on is evaluation. And if it's not working and we need to adjust, we'll be flexible to adjust. But if an instructor is administering a course that specifically is targeting producers or has producers that are attending, they will be able to apply to SCI for a producer participant grant that will significantly reduce those royalty license fees so that they can offer that course to that individual at a reduced price.
Okay, great.
Okay. So that's I don't have a whole lot of other information along pricing except kind of framework and strategy around that. because many of these courses are going to be brand new courses that we're going to be introducing and offering.
Okay. So people go to where to find out more?
Yeah. So sci.coffee is our website. So you can go to that website. You can register for an account that puts you in our system and our database, gives you a profile. Maybe you never take a course with SCI. That's fine. No problem. But that gives you, at least puts you into a mailing list that you would be notified of different courses and different updates. You can also follow us on Instagram at Sustainable Coffee Institute. We'll be releasing new information there as well. And that's, for right now, that's probably the two best places to get up-to-date information. We will be releasing some videos here pretty soon. We are not going to tie ourselves to existing forms, and we're discussing and releasing a SCI. SCI released a cupping form back in 2018. We've refreshed it and made a few updates and are releasing it as one tool. So one, we didn't want to tie ourselves to an SCA or CQI tool that would put it at potential for issues going forward. So we got ahead of that and we're releasing our own form. But our sensory programs are more about training and educating individuals to be comfortable and navigate across any tool. As Marty will say, we're not monogamous in that somebody who would come and take a course has to only use and will only be trained in the SCI form. They will be competent to navigate and use others, because as a sensory professional in our industry, you should be comfortable with other forms and be able to navigate those. But we have released a form that we will be using in some of our trainings and in our trainings that allows us to provide aligned with how the industry is currently evaluating coffees and how I believe the industry will continue to evaluate coffees for those individuals in our industry that are looking for another option.
Him, this has been a delight. Thanks for coming back on the podcast. Let's
My
not
pleasure.
make it 7 years in
I
between
agree.
podcasts.
I agree. And it's quite unreal to think about where I was and where the industry was
I know, right?
7 years ago, and thinking about the next 7 years. So anyways, I really can't tell you enough how much I appreciate it. And yeah, so grateful for the opportunity.
It's my pleasure, and I wish you guys the best of luck. I hope that this conversation, folks, has given you some insight to help you make some decisions about what's going on. We only ever want to cause good trouble if we have to cause trouble. This is not about being for or against anything. This is about standing up for the values that Mapper Forward stands by, which is integrity, authenticity, curiosity, and openness. We live by those values. No one would be surprised to know that that's our values. And so, yeah, I care exceptionally deeply about this industry. And I see you all as my people. And when I feel like you're being tricked, I turn into the big sister of the industry and start getting all very protective of everyone. So I hope this is one of many conversations that will be had around this subject. And again, anyone from the SCA that wants to come and have the conversation, I'm really the easiest person to find on social media. You know how to get in contact with me. And ask any guest that's come on the podcast for my WhatsApp, and they'll connect you that way. So, Tim, we have a tradition on this show that I'm sure you know about because you listen to the podcast, but will you peace, love, and peanut butter us out of this series?
Peace, love, and peanut butter.
Have an amazing rest of your day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Mapper Forward.